The words hit me like ice water in the warm Chelum night. Dylan lifted his glass, that smirk I used to find charming spreading across his face, and said it loud enough for everyone to hear. "I just can't stand your mediocrity anymore, Lena. I can't build an empire with someone whose content being ordinary." The laughter at our table died instantly. Every eye turned toward me. My heart stopped, then started beating so hard I thought everyone could hear it. The salt air suddenly felt too thick to breathe. I forced my lips into a smile, the kind that hurts your face, and swallowed the burning lump rising in my throat. My hands shook as I reached for my water glass. This was supposed to be our healing trip. Our friends had spent the whole week trying to pretend they didn't notice the tension between us. Now there was nothing to pretend about. Dylan had just humiliated me in front of everyone we knew. The candles on the table flickered, casting shadows across faces frozen in shock. Someone coughed. Someone else whispered. I kept smiling, kept breathing, kept pretending my entire world wasn't crumbling into dust right there at that beachside table in Mexico. I didn't cry, not yet. I just sat there watching Dylan lean closer to Sienna, whispering something that made her throw her head back and laugh. Sienna, with her perfect hair and her startup that Daddy's money had funded. Sienna, who'd been circling Dylan like a shark for months. The music kept playing. Our friends started talking again, too loud, trying to fill the horrible silence. I excused myself quietly, like I was just going to the bathroom. Nobody tried to stop me. I walked barefoot down to the shoreline, my sandals dangling from my fingers. The sand was still warm from the day's sun. The waves rolled in, cold and shocking against my feet. I stood there letting the water numb my toes, my ankles, my calves. The moon was full and beautiful, and I hated it. I hated everything beautiful about this night. Finally, when I was sure I was alone, I let the tears come. They fell hot and angry down my cheeks, mixing with the salt spray from the ocean. I cried for 4 years. I cried for every late night I'd spent editing his proposals while he slept. I cried for the girl who'd believed in his vision more than her own. My name is Lena Marshall. I'm 29 years old. I work as a product developer in Chicago, creating formulas for a cosmetics company that pays me well but treats me like I'm replaceable. I thought this trip to Chelum would fix us. I thought a week of sun and ocean and time away from work stress would remind Dylan why he'd loved me in the first place. I was wrong. He didn't come to Mexico to reconnect. He came to end things publicly, dramatically, with witnesses. That's who Dylan was, I realized too late. Everything had to be a performance. Everything had to serve his narrative. And right now, his narrative needed a villain, someone holding him back from greatness. That someone was me, the ordinary one, the mediocre one, the one content with her small life and her small dreams. Standing there in the waves, I finally understood something important. This wasn't about me at all. This was about him needing someone to blame for his own failures. But understanding didn't make it hurt less. Understanding didn't stop my chest from feeling like someone had reached inside and crushed my heart with their bare hands. I stayed on that beach until my tears ran dry. The flight home was torture. Our friends pretended to sleep, giving me privacy I didn't want. Dylan didn't even show up to say goodbye at the airport. He'd stayed behind with Sienna, probably celebrating his freedom. I scrolled through my phone, looking at photos from the trip. There I was, smiling on the beach. There we were, holding drinks at sunset. In every picture, my smile looked fake now, like I'd been playing a part in someone else's story. I selected all the photos from the past week and hit delete. Then I went back further. 6 months. A year. 2 years. Delete, delete, delete. The woman sitting next to me glanced over, probably wondering why I was crying again. I didn't care. By the time the plane landed in Chicago, I'd erased almost every trace of Dylan from my camera roll. The photos were gone, but the memories still played on repeat in my head. His laugh when I'd suggested starting my own business. His dismissive wave when I'd shared my skincare ideas. His constant reminders that I should be grateful he included me in his world. 4 years of making myself smaller so he could feel bigger. My apartment smelled like him. His cologne lingered in the bathroom. His hoodie was still draped over my desk chair. His favorite mug sat in the sink. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, collecting pieces of him. T-shirts, charging cables, the expensive running shoes I'd bought for his birthday. Everything went into a cardboard box. I didn't cry this time. I was too tired for tears, too numb. I found the notebook where he'd been sketching business ideas, all grand plans with zero follow-through. I found the stack of books on entrepreneurship that he'd bought but never read. I found the framed photo of us from 2 years ago, both of us laughing at something I couldn't remember. It all went in the box. When I was done, I sat down and wrote a note on the back of an old envelope. "Take care of your empire." Short, simple, final. I placed it on top of his things and set the box by the front door. Then I locked the deadbolt, put on the chain, and finally felt like I could breathe. He didn't deserve a long explanation. He didn't deserve my anger or my sadness. He'd get his stuff and nothing else. 4 years earlier, everything had been different. I just started my job in product development, eager and hopeful. Dylan was unemployed, living off his parents' money and his own confidence. We met at a coffee shop where he was holding court, telling anyone who'd listen about his revolutionary business idea. I was charmed by his passion, his certainty, his big dreams. Within a month, we were inseparable. Within 3 months, I was working 10-hour days at the lab and spending my nights helping him. I edited his business proposals, making his rambling ideas sound professional. I designed his presentation slides. I introduced him to everyone I knew who might help. I believed in him completely. He told me I was his partner, his muse, his secret weapon. But looking back now, I could see the truth. I was his unpaid assistant, his cheerleader, his safety net. Every time an opportunity fell through, he'd say the world wasn't ready for his genius. Every time someone rejected his pitch, he'd blame their short-sightedness. It was never his fault. It was never his responsibility. And I, stupidly, eagerly, desperately, had enabled every excuse. I'd made it easy for him to fail because I was always there to catch him. I remembered the night I'd shown him my own idea. It was late. Maybe 2 in the morning. I'd been up for hours working on a formula, something I'd been thinking about for months. A clean skincare line for people with sensitive skin like mine. Simple ingredients, honest marketing, affordable prices. I was so excited I couldn't sleep. I pulled out my laptop and started sketching the concept, designing labels, researching suppliers. When Dylan wandered into the kitchen for water, I showed him everything. I talked fast, nervous but hopeful. He looked at my screen for maybe 30 seconds. Then he laughed, not a small chuckle but a real dismissive laugh. "That's your big idea, skincare." He shook his head. "Lena, that market's completely saturated. You'd be competing with billion-dollar companies. It's small-time thinking." I felt my excitement drain away like someone had pulled a plug. "You're too afraid of real risk," he continued. "That's always been your problem. You want to play it safe." I closed my laptop, embarrassed. The formulas I'd been so proud of suddenly seemed childish. I tucked everything away in a drawer and never mentioned it again. That night, I'd let him kill my dream before it could even take its first breath. Back in my apartment alone, I opened Instagram. I don't know why, maybe I needed to hurt more before I could start healing. Sienna had posted a new photo 3 hours ago. Dylan's hand rested possessively on her knee. They were sitting at some trendy restaurant, both dressed up, both smiling. The caption made my stomach turn. "Building something real." 23 comments, all supportive. All congratulations to them. My chest tightened until I couldn't breathe properly. I should have blocked her. I should have thrown my phone across the room. Instead, I took a screenshot. I looked at that photo for a long minute, studying Dylan's face. He looked happy, triumphant, like he'd upgraded. Then I put my phone down and walked to my bedroom closet. I pushed aside the winter coats and reached for the plastic storage bin in the back. Inside were all my old notebooks, the ones I'd hidden away after Dylan had mocked my ideas. I carried the bin to my kitchen table and started pulling things out. Formulas. Sketches, research, dreams I'd abandoned because someone told me they were small. Someone who was wrong. I stayed up all night going through my old work. Some of it was amateur, the hopeful scribbles of someone who didn't know what she was doing. But some of it was good, really good. I found the formula I'd been most proud of, a gentle serum for reactive skin. I tested it on myself for weeks and it had actually worked. My skin had never looked better. Then Dylan had laughed and I'd stopped everything. Now, sitting at my kitchen table at 4 in the morning, I pulled out a fresh notebook. At the top of the first page, I wrote one word in capital letters, Lumina. It meant light. I'd looked it up years ago when I'd first started dreaming about this. Light for sensitive skin, light for new beginnings, light after darkness. I whispered the name out loud, testing how it felt in my mouth. Lumina. It felt right. It felt like mine. Below the name, I wrote another sentence. Let's see who's ordinary. My hand was steady. My vision was clear. For the first time since Chalum, I felt something other than pain. I felt angry, and anger I was discovering could be fuel. My kitchen became my laboratory. I took vacation days from work, telling my boss I needed time to recover from a bad breakup. It wasn't a lie. Every morning I woke up at 6 and started mixing, pots steaming on the stove, beakers lined up beside coffee mugs, measuring spoons sticky with oils and serums. I made mistakes constantly. I burned a batch of cream so badly it turned brown. I mixed ingredients that separated immediately, floating in disgusting layers. I spilled glycerin on the floor and nearly slipped trying to clean it up, but I kept going. I documented everything in my notebook, learning from each failure. I ordered ingredients online, spending money I probably shouldn't spend. I watched chemistry tutorials on YouTube until my eyes burned. My apartment smelled strange, like a combination of lavender and rubbing alcohol. I didn't care. I was creating something. Not for Dylan, not for anyone else. For me. After 2 weeks of constant work, I finally created something that looked right. A light serum that absorbed quickly and didn't irritate my sensitive skin. I tested it on my inner arm first, waiting for redness. Nothing happened. Just smooth, calm skin. I laughed out loud in my empty kitchen, covered in flour and serum stains. My friend Maya came over the following week. She took one look at my kitchen and raised her eyebrows. "You've officially lost it," she said, but she was smiling. I showed her what I'd been working on, explaining the formula, the concept, everything. She listened patiently, then surprised me. "Let me try it." Maya had struggled with eczema for years. She'd tried everything, spent hundreds on dermatologist-recommended products. Most made her skin worse. I gave her a small bottle of my serum, nervous. "Test it on a small area first," I warned. "And if it burns or itches, wash it off immediately." She promised she would. 3 days later, she called me screaming. "Lena, what is in this stuff? The redness on my cheeks is gone, gone. Do you understand? I've had that redness for 2 years. I could hear tears in her voice. "This is magic. You have to make more. You have to sell this." For the first time in months, I felt something solid inside my chest. Not hope exactly, but something close. Belief. Maybe I wasn't mediocre. Maybe I'd just been waiting for permission I didn't need. Maya became my first real customer, insisting on paying me for 3 more bottles. That money, $45, felt more valuable than any paycheck I'd ever earned. I cut my hair, not because of Dylan, I told myself, but because I needed change. I sat in the salon chair and told the stylist to do whatever she wanted. She cut 8 inches off, leaving it shoulder length and sharp. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I looked stronger somehow, more awake. I painted my apartment walls white, covering the beige Dylan had chosen. I rearranged furniture, threw out his favorite chair, and bought new plants. I reclaimed my space inch by inch. Every morning I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and whispered the same thing. "We're starting over." It became a ritual. Sometimes I believed it. Sometimes I was just going through the motions, but I kept saying it anyway. The products I mixed became therapy. Each formula was a piece of healing. The rose hip oil reminded me to be gentle with myself. The vitamin C serum reminded me I could be bright again. The retinol reminded me that change happens slowly, but it happens. I created a morning routine, a nighttime routine, a weekend routine. Structure helped. Purpose helped. My apartment stopped feeling like a tomb of a failed relationship and started feeling like a workshop for building something new. I took 12 bottles to a local boutique near my apartment. The owner, an older woman named Patricia, looked skeptical when I walked in. "I'm not interested in selling cheap knockoffs," she said before I'd even opened my mouth. I carefully unpacked my samples and told her my story. Not about Dylan, just about my skin and my frustration with harsh products and my desire to create something gentle. She listened, examining the bottles. "These labels are handwritten," she pointed out. "I know," I said. "I'm just starting, but the product is good. I'll leave 5 bottles on consignment. If they don't sell in 2 weeks, I'll take them back and you owe me nothing." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. 5 bottles, 2 weeks. I left the shop trying not to get my hopes up. 2 days later, Patricia called. "Bring me 10 more bottles. I sold out." I actually danced in my kitchen, still wearing my work clothes from my real job. I danced until I was dizzy and laughing. 10 more bottles became 20. 20 became 50. Word spread slowly but steadily. Women told their friends. Friends told their sisters. My phone started ringing with requests. I quit sleeping, spending every evening after work mixing and bottling. 3 months after Chalum, my phone buzzed with a text from Dylan. "Heard you're doing your little project. Proud of you." I stared at those words for a full minute. Little project. Of course, that's how he saw it. I typed 3 words. It's not little. But before I could hit send, I deleted them. He didn't deserve my defense. He didn't deserve any response at all. I left him to read and went back to packaging orders. That small choice felt powerful. I was done explaining myself to people who'd already decided I was small. An hour later, he sent another message. "Can we talk? I miss you." I blocked his number. Then I blocked him on every social media platform. Then I blocked Sienna too. Not because I was hurt anymore, but because I was busy. I had orders to fill. I had formulas to perfect. I had a business to build. That night, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by bottles and labels and packing materials. I was exhausted, but it was a good exhaustion. The kind that comes from creating instead of destroying. The kind that comes from moving forward instead of staying stuck. Dylan had missed his chance to be part of something real. That was his loss, not mine. The next 6 months became a blur of work. I was living 2 lives. During the day, I sat in my corporate lab, developing other people's products. During the night, I ran my own business from my kitchen. I learned e-commerce by watching free tutorials. I taught myself basic graphic design to make my labels look more professional. I emailed suppliers until I found ones who'd work with someone ordering small quantities. I packed orders at 2 in the morning, my hands moving automatically while my mind spun with plans. I learned about shipping rates and inventory management and customer service. I made mistakes constantly. I sent the wrong product to a customer and had to overnight the correct one. I undercharged for shipping and lost money for a whole month before I caught the error. I ran out of labels and had to handwrite 50 orders. But the business grew. Slowly at first, then faster. 1 bottle became 5 and became 50. 1 customer became 10 and 100. The brand started humming quietly through word of mouth. Women who loved the products posted about them online. Small beauty bloggers reached out asking for samples. My email inbox went from empty to overwhelming. I had to create systems, processes, and ways to manage the chaos. My apartment was no longer just my home. It was headquarters, warehouse, and production facility all at once. One Sunday morning, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror without makeup, my hair messy, wearing an old t-shirt. I'd been up until 3 packing orders. My eyes had dark circles underneath them, but my skin looked good, really good. I picked up my own serum, the one I'd created 8 months ago in anger and hope. I applied it carefully, watching it absorb. The woman in the mirror looked different from the one who'd stood on a beach in Cholum, forcing a smile while her heart broke. This woman looked tired but alive, working but purposeful, alone but not lonely. I leaned closer to the mirror, looking into my own eyes. "You're not mediocre," I whispered. The words felt strange at first, like a language I'd forgot how to speak. So I said them again louder. "You're not mediocre." This time they felt true. I thought about Dylan's words on that awful night. Mediocre, ordinary, content with small things. He'd meant those words as insults, as reasons to leave. But standing here now, running a growing business I'd built from nothing, I understood something important. There was nothing ordinary about working 2 jobs to chase a dream. There was nothing mediocre about creating something that helped people. Dylan had been wrong. Or worse, he'd been lying to justify his own cowardice. The turning point came from nowhere. A skincare influencer with 200,000 followers somehow found my product. I never figured out how. She ordered a bottle, tried it, and posted an unprompted review. "This serum literally saved my skin," she wrote. "Small batch, handmade, perfect ingredients. The owner responds to emails personally. Link in bio." My phone exploded. The orders crashed my basic website within an hour. I sat on my kitchen floor surrounded by boxes, laughing and crying at the same time. Maya came over and found me like that, completely overwhelmed. "You need help," she said. Not a question, a statement. She called 3 of our friends. They came over with wine and pizza, and we spent the whole night setting up a proper inventory system and packing orders. We worked until dawn, laughing deliriously, making stupid jokes, and celebrating. By the time the sun came up, we'd processed 200 orders, 200 people who wanted my little project. I paid my friends for the product and homemade breakfast. They refused money, saying they'd tell their grandchildren about being there at the start. One of them, James, who worked in marketing, offered to help me set up social media properly. "This is going to be big," he said. "You need to be ready." For the first time, I let myself believe him. I didn't go looking for news about Dylan, but our lives were too connected in Chicago. People talked. I heard through the grapevine that his startup was struggling. The revolutionary idea he'd been pitching for 4 years still hadn't launched. Investors who'd initially shown interest had quietly backed out. Money was running dry. I looked him up online, breaking my own rule. His LinkedIn was full of motivational quotes about persistence and vision. His Instagram showed him at networking events, always smiling, always confident. But people who knew him whispered the truth. He was drowning. The company he'd built his entire identity around was dying slowly and publicly. Sienna had disappeared from his feed 3 months ago. No explanation, just gone. I felt nothing about that. Not satisfaction, not pity, just a distant awareness. We'd become strangers, our lives moving in opposite directions. Mine was expanding. His was contracting. I closed the browser and went back to work. I had a product launch to plan, new formulas to test, a business to grow. His struggle wasn't my concern anymore. I'd wasted 4 years carrying his dreams. I wouldn't waste another minute watching him drop them. The email came on a Tuesday. A wellness investor named Catherine Park wanted to meet about Lumina. She'd seen the influencer post, done her research, and liked what she saw. Could I come in for a meeting Friday morning? I said yes before I'd even processed what was happening. Friday arrived too fast. I wore my best interview suit, the one I usually saved for corporate presentations. I printed materials, practiced my pitch, and tried to control my shaking hands. The investment firm's office was downtown, all glass and steel and money. I checked in at reception, was led to a conference room, and saw Catherine immediately. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and an easy smile. We shook hands. Then I noticed the other person in the room, Dylan. He sat at the far end of the table, his face going pale when he saw me. He was here pitching for investment. Of course he was. This was his last desperate attempt to save his failing company. We stared at each other for one frozen moment. All the history between us hung heavy in the air. Then Catherine spoke, breaking the spell. "Shall we begin?" I sat down, calm on the outside, screaming on the inside. This was going to be interesting. Catherine asked Dylan to present first. He stood, and I could see his hands trembling slightly as he connected his laptop. His pitch was polished, I'd give him that. 4 years of practice had made him smooth. He talked about disrupting industries and revolutionary platforms and untapped markets. Big words, vague specifics. Catherine listened politely, asking sharp questions that Dylan struggled to answer. "Your user acquisition cost seems high. How do you plan to scale? Your revenue model assumes 100,000 users in year 1. What's that based on? You've been in development for 4 years. Why hasn't the product launched?" Each question landed like a small bomb. Dylan deflected, made excuses, promised better data later. When he finished, Catherine thanked him and turned to me. "Lena, whenever you're ready." I stood, made eye contact with Catherine, and began. I didn't have flashy slides. I had real numbers. I showed her my growth over 9 months. I showed her customer retention rates, profit margins, and production costs. I showed her emails from customers whose skin had improved. I told her my story simply, honestly. I'd started this in my kitchen because I saw a need. I'd grown it through word of mouth because the product worked. I wasn't promising to disrupt anything. I was just solving a real problem for real people. Catherine's eyes never left mine. She was listening, really listening. When I finished, she smiled. Dylan looked like he'd been punched. Catherine called 3 days later. "We're choosing Lumina." Those 4 words changed everything. She offered me exactly what I needed. Enough money to scale production, move out of my kitchen, hire help. She believed in what I'd built. She saw the potential. I signed the contract in her office, my hands steady this time, my signature confident. As I was leaving, Catherine mentioned something casually. "Dylan called asking if we'd reconsidered. I told him we'd moved forward with Lumina." She paused. "He didn't take it well." I just nodded. What was there to say? The news spread through Chicago's small startup community quickly. People who'd witnessed my humiliation in Chalum heard about my success. People who dismissed my little project suddenly wanted to talk. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The contract spoke for itself. That night, Maya took me out to celebrate. We went to an expensive restaurant, ordered champagne, and toasted to new beginnings. "You did it," she said, tears in her eyes. "You actually did it." I looked at my best friend and felt overwhelming gratitude. She'd been there through the worst of it. She'd believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. "We did it," I corrected her, because I hadn't done this alone. I'd had help from friends, from customers, from strangers on the internet who'd taken a chance on a small business. Success wasn't solitary, it was collective. The orders surged after the announcement. A beauty magazine reached out about a feature. Local news wanted to interview me. My phone rang constantly with opportunities. I moved production out of my kitchen and into a small commercial space. I hired 2 people to help with packaging and shipping. I brought on a part-time chemist to help with formula development. Lumina was becoming real, professional, and legitimate. My apartment, once suffocating with reminders of failure, now felt peaceful. I turned the spare bedroom into a home office. Plants filled the windows. My walls held photos of friends, of my products, of moments of joy. I stood in my living room one evening, surrounded by the quiet hum of my life, and realized something profound. I was happy. Not the desperate, clinging happiness of someone afraid to lose something, but the deep, solid happiness of someone who'd built something worth keeping. The kind of happiness that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. I thought about the girl who'd stood in the Chalum waves, crying and broken. She'd felt so far from this moment, but she'd been wrong. She hadn't been far from success. She'd been standing right at the beginning of it, she just hadn't known yet. Dylan's company folded in November. I heard about it the way I heard everything about him now, through other people. The announcement was quiet, almost shameful. Unpaid salaries, outstanding debts, a website that went dark overnight. He'd built his empire on credit and confidence, and both had finally run out. He sent me a long message. I saw his name in my blocked folder and unblocked him just to read it. The message was part apology, part nostalgia. He was sorry for how things ended. He was proud of what I'd built. He wondered if we could talk sometime, catch up, maybe even. I read it once. Then I archived it, no reply. He didn't deserve my time or my energy. He'd had 4 years of both and had wasted every minute. Some people commented that I should be bigger, forgive him, show grace. But grace doesn't mean giving someone another chance to hurt you. Grace can also mean walking away and meaning it. Dylan had made his choices. He'd chosen arrogance over partnership. He'd chosen public humiliation over private conversation. He'd chosen to tear me down instead of building with me. Now he got to live with those choices. That wasn't cruelty. That was the consequence. The conference invitation came in December. A women's entrepreneurship summit wanted me to speak about building a business from nothing. Me speaking on a stage, sharing my story. 2 years ago, I would have been terrified. Now I was ready. The day arrived cold and clear. I wore a red dress, bold and bright. I stood backstage listening to my introduction, my heart pounding but my head clear. When they called my name, I walked onto that glass-lit stage and looked out at hundreds of faces. All those people had come to hear me. Me, the mediocre one. I spoke for 20 minutes about failure and resilience. I talked about kitchen laboratories and 2 a.m. packing sessions. I talked about the importance of believing in yourself when no one else does. And I ended with the words that had carried me through the darkest moments. Sometimes rejection is just redirection. The applause was immediate and overwhelming. People stood. Camera flashes went off. In the back row, almost hidden, I spotted a familiar face. Dylan. He'd come to hear me speak. Our eyes met across that crowded room. He looked older, defeated, but also something else. Proud, maybe, or just sad. I held his gaze for 3 seconds, then looked away. He was part of my past, not my future. I had more important people to thank. That evening, I walked alone along the pier. The Chicago wind cut sharp and cold, but I didn't mind. Lake Michigan stretched out endlessly, dark water reflecting city lights. My phone buzzed. Another message, this time from a major retail chain. They wanted to carry Lumina in 300 stores nationwide. 300 stores. I stopped walking and stared at that message, letting the reality sink in. 2 years ago, I'd been crying on a beach in Mexico. 1 year ago, I'd been mixing formulas in my kitchen. Now I was building something that reached people everywhere. I thought about Dylan's words one more time. Mediocre, ordinary, holding him back. And I laughed out loud, the sound carried away by the wind. I hadn't been holding him back. I'd been pulling him forward, carrying weight he never acknowledged. When I'd finally dropped that weight and walked my own path, I discovered something true. I didn't need his permission to be extraordinary. I never had. I typed a quick reply to the retail chain, confirming my interest. Then I put my phone away and kept walking. The pier stretched out before me, city lights glowing, water dark and endless. Somewhere behind me was everything I'd left. Somewhere ahead was everything I was building. I whispered into the cold night just for me. Guess I wasn't holding anyone back. I was just building something he couldn't keep up with. The waves agreed, rolling steady and sure. I smiled and walked on. Free,